I never imagined this is how things would turn out. If you had asked me just a few months ago whether I'd be in a situation where my sister was demanding that I pay for her wedding, I would have laughed. Family is supposed to look out for each other, right? I've always been the responsible one, the one who helps when someone needs something. But what Olivia asked me to do wasn't just a request, it was a demand. And that's when everything changed. It all started on a typical Tuesday evening. Olivia called me out of nowhere, her voice bubbling with excitement. She had news. She was engaged. Ryan, her boyfriend of 2 years, had popped the question. I was happy for her. She had found someone she cared about, and I had seen Ryan around enough to know he seemed like a decent guy. It was supposed to be a moment to celebrate, a joyful occasion. And for a while it was. But then came the next part, the part that hit me like a ton of bricks. Olivia casually dropped the bomb. You're gonna pay for the wedding, right? I stared at my phone, thinking I had misheard her. What? I said, half laughing, unsure if she was joking. But no, she wasn't joking. Olivia, my sister, whom I had always taken care of, had just told me that I was expected to foot the bill for her entire wedding. The dress, the venue, the catering, the photographer, everything. Apparently, mom and dad couldn't help her, and Ryan's parents were already contributing to other aspects of the wedding, so naturally, I was the one she turned to. What? At first, I thought it was a misunderstanding, that maybe she was just looking for a bit of help with some costs, maybe an extra contribution. But as she kept talking, I realized that wasn't the case at all. You make enough money, Ethan, she said, almost as if it were an obvious fact. You can afford it. I don't have anyone else who can help. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Here I was, working my ass off for everything I had, trying to build my life, and now my sister, the person who had always expected the world handed to her, was demanding that I pay for her dream wedding. The audacity. At that moment, I felt this cold sense of reality hit me. This wasn't a request, this was an entitlement. Olivia had no problem treating me like I was just a means to an end, someone who existed to make her life easier. She didn't care about the years I spent struggling to get ahead, the sacrifices I made to be financially independent. She just expected me to hand over tens of thousands of dollars because she was my sister. The worst part, she wasn't even asking, she was telling me. Like it was a given. I didn't have a choice in the matter. She had already decided that I was going to cover the cost of her perfect day. I wasn't the kind of person who could easily say no, especially when it came to family, but this was different. This felt wrong. There was a line, and Olivia had just crossed it. I had always been there for her, always stepped up whenever she needed me, but this was too far. She wasn't asking for a favor. She was demanding something that I couldn't give. And that's when I made a decision. If Olivia wanted to treat me like a walking ATM, then I would show her the true cost of this entitlement. It wasn't the first time Olivia had made demands like this, but it was the first time it went this far. Growing up, I was always the one who looked after everyone. I'm the older brother, so it came with the territory. When our parents weren't around or when things got tough, I was the one who picked up the slack. Olivia, on the other hand, was the golden child. She never had to worry about the small stuff because she always had someone to rely on, whether it was mom, dad, or me. She was the baby of the family, the one who could get away with anything. I didn't mind it at first. In fact, I kind of enjoyed being the responsible one. It gave me a sense of purpose, and to be honest, I liked being the person everyone counted on. But as we got older, I began to realize just how much Olivia took advantage of that. She would borrow money for random things, never paying me back. She would ask me to help her out with tasks she could easily do herself, and I'd always say yes. And every time I helped, I didn't get the sense that she appreciated it. There was no thank you, no acknowledgement, just a sense of entitlement. I didn't mind at first, but over the years, I started to feel like I was being used. Still, I kept doing it. After all, she was my sister, and I loved her. She was family. But when she got engaged, everything changed. When Olivia told me about her engagement, I was thrilled. I thought this was a new chapter for her, one where she'd start to settle down and build a life with someone. I had never been so happy for her, but as soon as she started talking about the wedding, that feeling of joy quickly turned into dread. Olivia wasn't asking for help planning a wedding. No, she was expecting me to pay for it. At first, I thought it was some sort of sick joke. Come on, right? You're kidding, right? I said, laughing nervously. But there she was, standing in front of me, looking me dead in the eye like it was the most obvious thing in the world. You make good money, Ethan. You can do this for me. Mom and dad can't afford it, and Ryan's family is already paying for other things, so it's all on you. I stood there, stunned. I didn't know how to respond. It was like a punch to the gut. I had always been there for her. I helped her out when she needed it, supported her when things weren't going well, and encouraged her to chase her dreams, but this This was different. She wasn't asking for a favor. She was demanding that I cover her wedding because in her mind, it was my responsibility. I tried to reason with her to explain that weddings were expensive and that maybe she should consider cutting back on some of the extravagant details, but Olivia was having none of it. Now, I want it to be perfect. You can afford it and you're my brother. You should want to help me. This is my dream wedding, Ethan. It wasn't about the wedding. It wasn't even about the money. It was about the disrespect. She assumed that because I had a stable job and a good income, I was obligated to help her. There was no consideration for my own finances, no thought about how much I had sacrificed to get where I was. I was always the one who did the right thing, the one who played by the rules, but here I was, standing in front of my sister, the one person I thought I could count on, and realizing she had no problem taking advantage of me. At that moment, I felt a surge of anger, but it wasn't just about the money. It was about the fact that she didn't even see me as a person, just a resource, a tool to get what she wanted. I had always been the one who fixed things, who made sure everyone else was okay, but this time was different. This time, I wasn't gonna let it slide. I spent the next few days thinking it over. I couldn't just say no to her, not directly. Olivia was stubborn and she had a way of twisting things to make me feel guilty. If I said no outright, it would destroy our relationship. And I wasn't sure I was ready for that. So I came up with a plan that would make her realize just how entitled she had become. I started playing along, letting her believe that I was going to help. I asked for the details, and she happily sent over the estimates. Venue costs, catering, photographer, florist, all the big ticket items that made me want to pull my hair out. As she sent me the invoices, I just kept nodding along, telling her I'd take care of it. The whole time, I was plotting my revenge. I knew I had to do something drastic. If Olivia thought I was just going to roll over and hand over my savings, I had another thing coming. So I started gathering the information I needed to turn this situation on its head. I created a fake invoice, one that looked just like the real ones she had been sending me, except this one was for a ridiculously inflated amount. I made it look real, using the same format and fonts with fake charges for the venue, catering, and more. I even made sure it was dated just like her other invoices, so she wouldn't think twice. I could feel the tension building as I prepared for the moment when I would send her the fake bill. Every time I looked at the email draft, my fingers hovered over the send button. But I knew I had to be patient. This wasn't something I could rush. It had to be perfect. I had spent days creating the fake invoice, making sure it looked just like the real ones she had been sending me. Everything was meticulously detailed, the breakdowns for each vendor, the total amounts, and even the due dates. I wanted her to believe this was the final payment, the one she couldn't ignore. Once the invoice was ready, I sat there for a few moments, debating whether to send it. I could already imagine her face when she saw the price, a whopping $55,000, a number so high it would make anyone panic. And this was only part of what she owed. But I wasn't worried about her reaction. I was worried about my own. Was I really willing to destroy this relationship just to teach her a lesson? But then I thought about all the years I'd spent being the responsible one, the one who was always expected to help. All the time she'd taken advantage of me. I had been the good brother for too long. This was my chance to show her that actions have consequences. I took a deep breath and clicked send. The next day, Olivia texted me. Her message was simple, but it was laced with panic. Ethan, what is this? You were kidding, right? I didn't respond right away. I wanted to let the tension build, let her stew in the shock of seeing that outrageous number. But as the day went on, the messages started to flood in. First, it was a few more texts, the usual please explain type, but by the time I finally opened my phone, the calls started coming in, one after the other. I didn't pick up, knowing exactly what was coming. Eventually, the ringing stopped, and I saw the voicemail notification. Olivia's voice was frantic, almost desperate. Ethan, please tell me this is a joke. This is way too much. You can't expect me to pay this. Please, I need your help. I can't lose this wedding. Her tone was a mix of frustration and fear, but at that moment, I didn't feel sorry for her, not even a little. I listened to the message a few more times, letting the satisfaction of her panic settle in. She had no idea what was coming. The entire time she had been taking me for granted. She hadn't once considered what would happen if I stopped playing along. I didn't call her back immediately. I let her sit with the feeling of helplessness, knowing that she was now in a tight spot. As the hours passed, I could almost imagine her pacing, trying to figure out how to fix her disaster. What she didn't realize was that I wasn't going to fix it for her. Around 9 p.m., I finally called her. "What the hell is this, Ethan?" she screamed as soon as I picked up. I stayed calm, leaning back in my chair, enjoying the sound of her voice cracking with anger. I'm confused, Olivia. I thought you wanted a perfect wedding. Isn't this what you wanted? I asked, playing dumb. There was a brief pause, and then the real panic set in. Ethan, this is insane. You can't just throw this kind of bill at me. I don't have this kind of money. I don't even know how to make this work, she yelled. It's not about the money, Olivia, I said, finally letting my frustration show. It's about the expectation. You thought I was just going to give you whatever you asked for, no questions asked. You thought you could take everything from me and leave me with nothing in return. Her voice softened, but there was still anger in it. This isn't fair. I never asked for this kind of treatment. Why would you do this to me? You didn't ask? Olivia, you didn't ask me anything. You just expected me to pay for everything. You treated me like a checkbook, not a person. I responded, finally laying out the truth. There was a long silence on the other end, and for the first time, I could tell she didn't have an answer. She had nothing to say. That silence spoke volumes. I let the call drag on for a few more minutes, during which Olivia tried to explain herself, but nothing she said could change what was already done. She begged me to pay, offered to pay me back in installments, and even suggested we split the costs. But I didn't buy it. I knew this wasn't about the wedding. It was about her realizing that she could no longer take advantage of me. Eventually, she broke down. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I thought you would help me. I don't know what else to do. There it was, the crack in her armor. For the first time, Olivia was seeing the consequences of her actions. Olivia, this is your problem now, I said, keeping my tone steady. You made your choices. You're not getting any more help from me. She didn't speak after that. I didn't feel bad. In fact, I felt relieved. I had finally stood up for myself, set boundaries, and made sure Olivia understood that her actions had consequences. For so long, I had been the one taking care of everyone, always doing what they wanted without a second thought. But not anymore. The next few days were chaos for Olivia. I could feel the tension building in every message, every frantic phone call, but I wasn't budging. I had made up my mind, and there was no way I was going to let her walk all over me anymore. But what really sealed the deal for me was when I heard the rumors. Olivia had already started telling people about the situation, spinning it like I was the bad guy. She called her parents, telling them how I had ruined her dream wedding, how I had made things impossible for her. And of course, they immediately sided with her. Mom and Dad were always quick to back Olivia, always ready to take her side, without ever considering my perspective. I was furious. But the best part? Olivia didn't even know that I was already 2 steps ahead. I had watched her reactions. I had seen her panic, her desperate attempts to save face in front of everyone. I could tell that, deep down, she didn't even realize the mess she had created, not just for me, but for herself. And that was when the real fun started. I kept hearing snippets of her calls with our parents and even her friends. She was spinning this story about how her greedy brother had refused to help, that I was heartless, that I didn't care about her. She even went as far as telling people that I was just jealous of her getting married, that I was bitter because she had found someone to spend her life with. Each time I heard these stories, I was burning up with rage. The nerve of her. But it was perfect. This was exactly what I had been waiting for. The more she dug herself into a hole, the better it was going to feel when I exposed the truth. And then it happened. 2 weeks after I'd sent her the fake invoice, I received an email from one of the vendors she had booked. It was a confirmation letter for the wedding that was never going to happen. Apparently, they hadn't been paid, and now the event was officially canceled. Olivia hadn't even been aware that the vendors were pulling out. She was still under the impression that she could negotiate or convince me to pay, but the truth had already hit. She had no money left. That's when I made my next move. I forwarded the email to everyone I could think of, her parents, friends, even a few of Olivia's colleagues. I wanted her to know that the moment she started trying to turn people against me, I wasn't going to just sit there and take it. I made sure everyone knew the truth about the fake bill, her endless demands, and how she had taken advantage of me. The response, let's just say it wasn't what she expected. Olivia called me the second she found out. I could hear the desperation in her voice, the panic that had finally set in. Then, what the hell did you do? I let her scream for a minute, knowing full well that her wedding was falling apart in front of her eyes. I did what you deserved, I said calmly. You wanted to treat me like an ATM, Olivia. You wanted me to just hand over money for your big day without even considering how it would affect me, so now you get to deal with the consequences. She tried to beg me to fix it. She said she would do anything to make it right. But I wasn't listening. It's too late for that, Olivia, I said, my voice finally breaking. You can't expect people to help you when you treat them like garbage. I've had enough of being your fallback. I hung up before she could say anything else. The truth had been exposed. She was embarrassed, humiliated, and I was done. The fallout was quick. Olivia tried to call me several more times, but I ignored every single one. I wasn't interested in hearing her excuses anymore. The vendors who had initially tried to accommodate her pulled the plug completely. She wasn't getting a refund for any of the money she had already spent, and she didn't have the financial ability to take out a loan to cover it either. The wedding was officially canceled. And just like that, her perfect day turned into a disaster. It was her fault, and now she had to face the music. I was content. I didn't care about the fallout. I didn't care that our parents were calling me cruel or heartless. The truth was, I was free. Free from her constant demands, free from her entitlement. She was the one who had made me feel like I owed her. But now she was the one with nothing. The aftermath was almost silent at first. Olivia stopped calling me. Our parents, who had always been so quick to side with her, went radio silent too. For once, I didn't feel like I was carrying the weight of everyone else's expectations on my shoulders. I was finally free. Free from the guilt, free from the manipulation, free from the constant emotional blackmail. But that didn't mean Olivia was. For weeks, I didn't hear from her. She disappeared from my life completely, and I assumed she was probably embarrassed. She had to be. I had exposed the truth, the ugly truth about how she'd treated me, how she'd taken everything for granted, and how she had expected me to bail her out just because she was my sister. But then one day, I got an unexpected call. It was from one of Olivia's closest friends, Anna. She told me that Olivia had been devastated by everything that had happened, that she was miserable and feeling like her life had completely fallen apart. I listened, but I wasn't moved by the sympathy. After all, this was the same Olivia who had put me in this situation in the first place. "He's a mess, Ethan," Anna said. "She's really sorry about what she did. She wants to make things right." I was silent for a moment. In the past, I would have immediately forgiven her. I would have given in, probably paid off some of her wedding debts, and gone back to playing the role of the ever-reliable big brother. But not this time. Not after everything she had done, not after everything I had sacrificed for her and been taken for granted. "Tell her I'm done," I said, my voice firm. "She needs to learn that actions have consequences. I'm not going to fix this for her." That was the last time I ever heard about Olivia from anyone other than my parents. Weeks went by, and Olivia's life seemed to spiral. She didn't get her dream wedding. Ryan, her fiance, who had been embarrassed by the whole fiasco, ended up breaking up with her. The fallout from the canceled wedding had affected their relationship in a way she never imagined. The shame and humiliation of having it all fall apart, especially in front of her friends and family, left her feeling isolated. She tried to call me again, but this time I ignored the message. Her financial situation worsened too. Not only did she lose her wedding deposits, but the debt she had racked up from the vendors was now hanging over her head. She tried to reach out to her parents, but this time they didn't have the same sympathy they once had for her. They told her that she had made her choices and that she needed to figure it out on her own. For the first time in her life, she was forced to deal with the consequences of her actions. And I watched it all unfold. Months later, I received a message from Olivia. It wasn't a plea for help or a demand for money. This time, it was a genuine apology. She acknowledged everything: the manipulation, the selfishness, the entitlement. She told me how much she regretted the way she had treated me and that she was finally ready to take responsibility for the mess she had made of her life. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't ask for my help. She simply wanted to let me know that she had learned a lesson. It took everything in me to not just reply with a sorry, but no, but I didn't. I just read the message and thought about it for a while. I was finally able to let go of all the bitterness I had been holding onto. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't holding onto the need to get revenge anymore. It was done. I never responded to Olivia. I had no interest in going back to the way things were, but I didn't need to. She had learned her lesson and I had moved on. A year later, I ran into Olivia at a family gathering. She had changed. Her once golden child personality was gone. There was no more entitlement, no more demands. In its place was a humble woman, one who had struggled and learned the hard way. We spoke briefly, and it felt normal. We didn't dive into the past. We didn't rehash everything that happened, but it was clear that the dynamic had shifted. She no longer saw me as her ATM or someone she could lean on without consequence. I had shown her that there were limits, and that if she wanted anything from me, she had to earn it. I didn't need to forgive her. I had already let go. The best part, I was no longer burdened by guilt or the pressure to keep fixing everything for everyone. I had finally learned how to set boundaries, and it felt good. I was free from the emotional blackmail, free from the constant feeling of being used. And as for Olivia, well, she eventually got back on her feet. She started over, learned the value of hard work, and never asked anyone for anything ever again. I may not have been the one to save her, but I had taught her one of the most important lessons of all. Actions have consequences. In the end, I didn't just fix my relationship with her, I fixed myself. I didn't need to be the hero. I didn't need to carry the weight of everyone's problems anymore. And that in itself was the real victory.